Greetings to you all. The Zanu PF regime is beginning to feel the heat generated by the country's worsening economic meltdown. However, instead of admitting that the party has no solution to end economic hardships, it is resorting to its tried and tested dirty tactic of blaming others for its own failures. In his latest article, Sanctions Must Go, Zimbabwe's 2019 clarion call, Elijah Chiwota, a seasoned Zanu PF apologist, is back to blaming sanctions for all Zimbabwe's economic ills. The article is full of the usual garbage, but does not answer any of the following points. Number one, the Americans went to town on what Zanu PF needed to do in the 30th July 2018 elections, make sure that those elections are free, fair, and credible, including making sure that Zimbabweans in the diaspora had a vote. The public media was free to all political players. The authorities produced a verified voters' roll, etc., etc. Do these things, and the sanctions will be lifted, they told Mnangagwa. Chiwota never mentioned the election demands, much less that Zanu PF failed to hold free and fair and credible elections. Only a first-class idiot with no idea of the critical importance of free, fair, and credible elections as the prerequisite for good governance would want the sanctions lifted under these conditions. Number two, while United Refinery Chief Executive Officer Busisa Moyo also took to the micro-blogging site Twitter, stating that, "I am yet to meet a single businessman worth his salt who is pro-sanctions. We have spoken out against this, and so has Steve Hanke. Sanctions should also be a crime against humanity in the near future at the International Criminal Court, because they are equally brutal to issues they purport to address," to what I quoted him. How many Zanu PF leaders, so-called independent-minded business leaders, etc., supported sanctions against the white colonial regimes? And rightly so too, because we all accepted that achieving meaningful political change, it was necessary to make some sacrifices. Why are sanctions against a vote-rigging, tyrannical black regime a crime against humanity, but sanctions against a white oppressive regime are not? Number three, blaming Zimbabwe's economic meltdown on the sanctions imposed by the West is a myth. The Zimbabwe economy was already in serious trouble, as can be seen from the two 5-year economic structural adjustment programs of 1990 and 1995. The programs failed to revive the economy because Zanu PF did not implement the agreed reforms. Indeed, President Mugabe and his regime publicly denounced IMF and the World Bank, blaming them for the country's economic mess. The two financial institutions had no choice but to stop giving Zimbabwe financial assistance because it was not servicing its loans, and soon the rest of the world followed suit. By the time the Americans and other Western nations imposed the sanctions in December 2001, none of the international financial institutions and banks were giving Zimbabwe any financial help. Not even the Chinese were giving Zimbabwe financial assistance for the same reason. failure to service and or repay the past debts. Number 4, whatever adverse effect sanctions have had on the Zimbabwe economy, it is nothing compared to the damage caused by corruption and other causes. In 2016, the then President Robert Mugabe admitted Zimbabwe was being swindled out of $15 billion in diamond revenue alone. Why is it that Zanu PF propagandists and apologists like Water have written many articles calling for the lifting of sanctions, but have never said a single word against Zanu PF's failure to deal with this cancer of corruption? They're quite happy to see the wholesale looting of the nation's resources continuing, and the blatant vote rigging, which is making it all possible, of course. We should not forget that Mnangagwa and his Zanu PF junta blatantly rigged last year's elections, confident the regime Zimbabwe is open for business, will open the floodgate for local and foreign investors and lenders. Not knowing that by blatantly rigging the elections, the regime sent out a clear message that Zimbabwe was still a pariah state ruled by corrupt and vote-rigging thugs. No one in their right mind would want to invest in a pariah state. The worsening economic situation is Zanu PF in total panic. The regime has failed to come up with a solution to end the shortages of cash, foreign currency, fuel, medicine, etc. And now it is facing the escalating civil servant strikes and other social unrest. We must also remember that the root cause of Zimbabwe's economic meltdown is the nation's failure to remove this corrupt and incompetent tyrannical Zanu PF regime from office. The party has rigged elections to stay in power. The 38 years of gross mismanagement and rampant corruption have taken a heavy toll on the nation. The need for Zimbabwe to come up with solutions to end the economic meltdown are great and urgent, because the economic situation of 75% of the population living on US $1 or less a day is morally, socially, and politically unsustainable. It is as clear as day that Zanu PF has no clue what is required to revive the nation's economy. The party rigged last year's elections, and so it has no mandate to govern. The only way forward is for the party to step down, to allow the nation the time and space to implement the democratic reforms necessary for free, fair, and credible elections. Zanu PF blatantly rigged the last elections, and not for the first time. They've done this for the last 38 years. And now the thugs cannot rig economic recovery. The real test now is, will the nation once again allow these thugs to ride roughshod over them, even to the point of destruction? Are we human beings, or are we slugs with no backbone at all? Nikabani, it's the people who define the greatness or otherwise of a country. What was the Shona adage? Great Zimbabwe. I cannot think one simple thing this nation has done right these last 38 years. We have blundered from pillar to post, sometimes making the same foolish mistake over and over again. We've swapped one corrupt and murderous tyrant for a corrupt and utterly useless village idiot, and then back to another corrupt and murderous tyrant. There is no excuse for this Zanu PF regime to remain in office another year, much less to 2023. But with an electorate that does not know their right hand from their left, sanctions from rigged elections, anything is possible. If Zanu PF is still in office in 2023, the party will rig the next elections. That is one thing we can be certain of. Thank you for listening.